guess I need to run my own computer so I can use it.
Hey, hold it, better.
Woohoo!
We're done.
Yeah.
I prefer not to, but then a picture with glasses
I need to get
It's
this
funny when I bought
you
your
hear me
name.
okay? Yeah.
and hard and
I knew it was gonna be
Yeah.
a big thing, because it's words and that.
Looks great.
right.
DJ doesn't look bad.
I mistakenly.
Oh dear, and that is standing.
Well, it just back, it just did exactly what you got.
Yeah. And you're probably, like a bomb.
Yeah,
Okay.
that by there a couple weeks ago, right behind this.
Yeah.
This is still in two screens, it's at the full display screen too,
Okay.
and it is a half screen.
Yeah, right.
It's logging with the.
Holy climate, I watched that on TV, it was like, are they done yet?
I know.
They should have, like, are they going to try, is that what they're doing? And there was talks about it.
Yeah.
You were in the stadium, but just when you're listening to the announcers, yeah.
Living into the wall.
You do the same thing,
Yeah.
But then.
Yeah.
So the
Right
time
screen
call,
is
I
got the
think,
lip.
Go up into-
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was,
There's nothing.
like, my nephew and I are both.
So.
Huh?
So, watch the first half of the night.
right?
And, watch the second half there, that game went over. So,
Three games that you can do, like, Oklahoma.
yeah,
Deciders, and you're like,
yeah, so we're so.
And,
out, and then
I lived in the north.
it was so loud. Like, I thought there was gonna be a lot of.
And like, at that time, there was nothing up there either, everybody.
Yeah, that's what you can see from the stands at least.
Yeah.
There was that.
Not that kind of point, I was one.
The hardest part is trying to get that thing printed out. I know you haven't, you're always.
Yeah, we have a
So
printer, yeah.
I got someone to go with and. So what we went to the Winnipeg Jets and graphics on the ice, they had a big jet.
Like, I can just let you know.
It's a show. Yeah, because we got, and then we got media, yet, right? We were in the lower.
No, not in person.
Oh, you were on the call.
I was on the call,
The
yeah.
night that he was Tuesday or whatever.
Okay.
And he was like, even though he's gonna get loud, so he warned you before he starts doing that crap.
That's
So
so
fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. And I was like, that sounds stupid, but we gotta get there like before the puck drop. You know, like the next line is fun and then. Really grab
And
them.
if you get to see them skate, my sister and I have been like to 4 or 5 games, we've never played before. She's a skate before.
Yeah.
And so finally I took him over, he drove them, so I'm like, okay. Yeah, we did, and it was like, huh, that's what it looks like when they skate, it's just,
Yeah,
I know,
fun.
it's crazy how
I
like
like that. And, I don't know, like the, intro, the ice graphics thing. It wasn't as good.
now,
I don't know if it's like, I can see it or.
Oh, that could be.
Well, it's really nice.
Yeah, that was posted, so many people posted on Facebook, you're like, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
and the NHL.
yeah.
It was the video.
Yeah, yeah.
They did.
It's weird because so your kids say.
So during COVID? We did.
So Bill, I just got a text from
Yeah.
Darren saying that video
Whatever
conferencing
was
is good to go.
And
Sorry,
then
say again?
it was covered
Darren
up
just
with
texted me
people.
saying
Where
video
did we
conferencing
sit?
is good to
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Las Vegas, will you please mute your microphones? Las Vegas, please mute.
We're off mute now whenever you're ready.
Got it. Okay, I would like to call to order today's meeting of the Nevada Department of Transportation Board of Directors for Monday, January 10th, 2022 to order. If I could ask the clerk to take the roll, please.
Governor Steve Sisolak.
Here.
Lieutenant Governor Lisa Cano Burkhead.
Here.
Controller Catherine Byrne. Member Virginia Valentine.
Here?
Member Stephen Esquaga.
Here.
And Member Justin Calvin.
Here.
Governor Yoder.
Thank you. For those of you who have not met our new Lieutenant Governor, she is seated to my immediate left. Lisa Cano Burkhead is welcome to the Nevada Department of Transportation Board of Directors meeting, which you're a member. And we appreciate your being here this morning and your willingness to serve. And hopefully everybody gets a chance to meet her as we move on. You want to say anything?
I'm excited to be part of the team, and I look forward to working together. And I'm happy to be here today. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Okay, this is the first time set aside for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item on the agenda, please step forward, identify yourself for the record, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody in Las Vegas wishing to speak during public comment? Do we have anybody in Carson City?
Yes, Governor, we have one person wishing to speak.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, Governor and board members. I'm PK O'Neill, Assemblyman for Assembly District 40, which covers all of Carson City and southeast part of Washoe County and Reno. I'll make this quick because, to be honest with you, standing, I got for Christmas a new knee. And one of the problems I've had is the knee keeps swelling up because I keep getting up to do work. So I'm not supposed to actually be here. Hopefully my doctor is not listening in today, to be honest with you. But I do want to thank you for this time. There's two items I wish to comment on. One, as I saw on the agenda that you're recognizing a retirement of various NDOT employees. I'd like to add my appreciation to them for their time served. It is truly appreciated, as every day as we drive about our great state on these roads that we have and what we're preparing to do in the future, I am deeply appreciative of the service that they have given to our state. And tied in with that, I am looking forward to the discussion presentation later in today's meeting on the naming of the NDOT headquarters to their former director, Garth Dull, who retired, and his only job during his time in service was with the state of Nevada Department of Transportation. So with that said, Governor, I appreciate the time. I look forward and I'll be available for any questions that may come up. And thank you very much, but I'm going to sit back down.
Thank you. Take care of that knee. Anyone else in Carson City wishing to speak?
And here, Governor.
Do we have any written public comment?
We have no written public comment.
Okay, then I will close item number 2, public comment, and move on to recognition of retirees.
Governor and members of the board, we have 2 retirees to recognize, one here in Vegas and one in Carson. I will read a little bit about both, and then we'll stand up and take pictures here and there at the same time. In Las Vegas, we have Pauline Beigel. She was an administrative services officer too when she retired from NDOT. She spent 13 and a half years here in the Washington Yard as part of our District 1 administration and 29 years in the state overall. And up north, we have Bill Story. He retired as our Assistant Chief of Planning. He had 12 years at the Department of Emergency Planning and 19 years at NDOT. We're grateful for their service and their time, not just with the state, but in specific with the Nevada Department of Transportation. We do our pictures?
Certainly. Pictures. Oh, we're all doing pictures. We're all doing pictures.
It's been a minute since we've done a picture like this. In the middle. Here's the governor. Clock is correct direction.
It's clock.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Say smile.
I guess you don't
Doesn't matter. In the eye.
Your eyes. Squint.
Okay, thank you.
One more, Adrian. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Just all where is approving the minutes on the agenda?
Oh, no, it's part of the consent agenda. It's item 5 in the consent agenda.
I don't know if we can make approval of minutes part of the consent agenda.
Okay.
Do we have a legal?
Dennis, can you give an opinion on the minutes as part of the consent agenda?
We can look into it, Director, certainly.
So, do you
Okay, well
want
then I'm going to take that item separately because of all the meetings I've ever been in, we could never do minutes as part of the consent agenda. So we will take item number 5 separately.
Okay.
So we'll do the director's report first.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Governor. Director's report, DJ. All right. First up, we would like to extend a warm welcome. Next slide, DJ, to our newest member of the board, Lieutenant Governor Lisa Burkhead. We had a good orientation with her last 2 weeks ago before the new year, and I know Cole and Sandra were able to brief her last week on the meeting. The position on the board has been vacant since the departure of Pete Marshall, and we greatly appreciate Secretary Sagaski for her assistance in the few months until the position was filled. We look forward to working with the new Lieutenant Governor. And related to this, we will have on our agenda next month the vote to appoint the vice chair. Next slide, please. All right, safety. Normally I'd start with safety, but I wanted to do a happy welcome first because the safety news from last year was not good. As we know, I talked about it all year long. And overall, there were 382 lives lost in Nevada on our roadways during 2021. That was up 18% from the previous year. It was the most since 2006. It's a record that we don't want. 7 counties experienced increases of 100% or more, including Carson, Esmeralda, Humboldt, Lyon, Mineral, Story, and White Pine. Statewide bicyclist fatalities were a good sign. They decreased close to 42%. But pedestrian fatalities rose almost 4%. Motorcyclist fatalities jumped by 32%. Speed and impairment, as I said all year, were the 2 biggest contributing factors every single month. I'd like to share a few examples of these crashes throughout the year in an effort to put a face to these numbers, because these aren't just numbers, they are people. We are unable to share 382, but they all deserve to be told. One life lost last year was that of a 6-year-old girl who was killed when the SUV she was in was hit from behind by a fast-moving pickup truck in the small town of Carlin last August. The crash occurred at the intersection of 12th and Chestnut Streets, but police said the vehicles at the scene had damage consistent with the crash at highway speed. In September, 2 people died on a single car crash along the Red Rock Loop in Las Vegas while driving at a high rate of speed. The driver failed to negotiate a gradual curve, went off the road, rolled over, trapping both occupants. The car then caught on fire. And in Sparks, a 62-year-old man died after crashing his Dodge truck into a FedEx semi-truck last summer. Authorities say the Dodge driver was driving fast as he veered off the road into landscaping before hitting a semi-truck stopped at a stop sign. There are 379 other stories of people on our roadways who didn't make it to their families either. We are working to do what we can to help save lives, and one way is with the launch of our statewide speed management action plan. We began this effort last spring to further evaluate strategies for managing speed on the state highway network. In collaboration with partner agencies, the plan will identify appropriate engineering enforcement, and educational countermeasures and strategies to reduce speed-related crashes. The statewide speed management action plan will outline actions that the state and other partners can take to reduce speed and speeding-related fatal and serious injury crashes. As drivers and community members, we must remember that traveling at a safe speed not only helps us avoid crashes, but can greatly mitigate the severity in the instance when there is a crash. All right, next slide, please. I wanted to take a moment to thank our dedicated highway maintenance staff for their work during the winter storms, which have loaded northern Nevada mountains and covered roads and bridges. Record-breaking snowfall in the Sierras caused travel delays and road closures over the holiday. Those are some of our team members in Reno and on the roads. Our highway maintenance pros were there to help clear the highways, and Ndot's maintenance crews work in staggered 12-hour shifts for 24-hour snow removal during storms. Our maintenance staff in northwestern Nevada dedicated more than 6,000 work hours during the Christmas week alone to clearing snow and ice. They battled walls of snows and wind gusts of 100 miles an hour to make highway travel safe for the public. On December 28th, the National Weather Service provided us with the following information. Total snowfall measured the week prior was 109 inches, or just over 9 feet at our Mount Rose summit. Wind gusts over Mount Rose were well over 100 miles an hour, with whiteout and blizzard-like conditions present for multiple days on end. Snowfall accumulated across the entire length of Mount Rose Highway, including 5 to 7 feet through the Incline Village area. Our crews also utilized our avalanche control detonation system near the Mount Rose summit to loosen snow on the roadside slope, and our plow operators were ready and positioned to remove it once it came down. Controlled releases like these help prevent unpredictable and potentially dangerous snow slides that could bury vehicles and motorists on the highway. Crews also work to keep US 50 open in order to ensure access to the communities along the corridor, as well as a path to California when I-80 was closed. Mountain roads like this present challenges and can result in long closures due to crashes, and our teams in Western Nevada help ensure people could get off the mountain safely. And last week, when it wasn't snowing, our staff was back at it again as hurricane force winds hit the Washoe Valley. Our top priority is safety, and I-580 and alternate US 395 were temporarily closed for safety. We actually measured speeds of 96 miles an hour on the Galena Bridge, which is something that we were cautioned about when we were designing. We designed for that, but 96 miles an hour coming perpendicular at your car is not something that we want people to encounter, so we had to close the road. Meanwhile, in northeastern Nevada, our crews worked efficiently to clear State Routes 140 north of Winnemucca, State Route 229 in Ruby Valley, and other routes of snow and ice. While recognizing our maintenance professionals, I also want to thank our partners at NSP and local law enforcement and emergency management. And Governor, I want to thank you and your board and the board for support. Your declaration of emergency on December 28th urged motorists stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic on Tahoe's East Shore not only to reroute and return to safety, but to avoid the potential of being stranded in freezing overnight temperatures. So I appreciate you being there and able to act as we were acting quickly in the moment. I should note also, I'm really proud of our team. We got a call from Stacey Montu, and she was asking about some tribal concerns. There was a tribe that had been stranded for 3 days and was unable to get their tribe to all the resources, and we were able to deploy our ELCO teams to get out there and clear the road. We can't always do that, but when we can, we're happy to help them. So I was glad we were able to help that tribe that had been stranded by the snow and ice. All right, the next thing I want to talk to you about is our downtown access project. The last time we talked about this project was in 2019. I think it's actually in February of 2019, our first board meeting together, Governor. And a lot has happened since then. Before we give you an update on the project, I want to just briefly summarize the history of the project and why it's important. The downtown access project will replace 1.6 miles of freeway through the heart of Las Vegas along 515 from Eastern to Rancho Drive. Much of the freeway in this area consists of 2 bridges, one of which was constructed in the 60s and the other in the 80s. Currently, we're in the NEPA phase of the project, which should conclude approximately mid-2023. During this time, we will select a preferred alternative, complete the conceptual design, hold public hearing, and produce a final environmental document. We'll then enter the design and right-of-way acquisition phase lasting into 2027, when we'll begin the construction phase. The project is currently anticipated to be complete in 2031. As part of the NEPA process we're currently in, 3 build alternatives and a no-build alternative are being evaluated to select the preferred alternative or the alternative which will be built. And these are a recessed alternative, a south alternative, a north alternative, and no build. The alternatives are developed to a concept level design, roughly 10%, and are considered preliminary and subject to change. While in the NEPA process, we're looking at the impacts the project could have on the area, assessing things like noise, historical buildings, waterways, air quality, environmental justice, parks and recreational facilities, and other impacts on the community. The team has performed several innovative public outreach endeavors on this project thus far, including street closure campaign to drive awareness of potential street closures as a result of the first public information meeting. You may recall, I think we did that last spring. Focus group meetings and polling regarding the project, including 2 Spanish language groups with residents who live within a half mile of the project. And project social media pages have started on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Since early 2019, We've held more than 75 meetings with downtown stakeholder groups, as well as individual stakeholders, businesses, churches, residents, and government agencies, and others. We are currently conducting a survey for residents and businesses in the immediate area to better understand how we can mitigate impacts of the project and ultimately deliver a project that will be beneficial for the surrounding community. We'll also be doing a poll in the near future of the entire Las Vegas Valley. The next public meeting is planned for later this month with virtual platform available for 30 days and an in-person meeting on January 25th from 4 to 7. Just to say that again because I was racing. The in-person meeting will be on January 25th from 4 to 7. The virtual component will run from January 17th to February 15th. At the public meeting, we'll be sharing information that compares the alternatives against each other. The project will, among many things, address aging infrastructure, help improve safety, and enable us to more effectively manage congestion. For more about the project, you can get information at the website ndotdap.com. So Nevada Department of Transportation, NDOT, Downtown Access Project, DAP.com. All right, next slide. County workshops. So our rural county workshops are underway. We're excited to be meeting in person for the first time in almost 2 years. These meetings are required by the federal law that we meet have these meetings between the counties and the state. And they're critical for building our relationship with the counties. The county input provides insight regarding our NDOT processes, services, and multimodal transportation systems that serve our social, recreational, and economic needs. The workshops are specifically designed to provide an informal and yet direct exchange of information and ideas between NDOT, the county staff, law enforcement, first responders, tribal and community members, transit providers, community and economic development stakeholders, and senior citizen services. During the workshops, our team will be on hand to discuss the wide range of transportation-related subjects that often come up. We'll utilize this opportunity to share what we've accomplished as it relates to the county. We'll review the One Nevada plan and goals, discuss how that aligns with county priorities and concerns, and lastly, work to identify meaningful concerns as they relate to the local proposed project studies and future plans. The workshops began on December 20th in Lyon County and will continue through January and February. And just a couple more slides. So this month is recognized as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And tomorrow, January 11th, is National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. Tomorrow, the public is encouraged to wear blue, the international color of human trafficking awareness. Human trafficking is a serious crime and violation of human rights involving force, coercion, or fraud to exploit a person into slave labor or sexual exploitation. It affects all populations, adults, children, men, women, foreign nationals, and U.S. citizens, and all economic classes. I should note, you're probably wondering why I'm talking about this. In our role, our team is out on the roads and they're exposed and more likely to be able to see people who may be victims of human trafficking. And so we're, with our team, going to be sharing more information about what human trafficking is and what we can do in our space to help combat it. So if we identify somebody, what we should do to make sure that they're brought into a safe space. Notably, I should note that Nevada is ranked first in the nation for human trafficking per capita. So it is a space that we are focused on and really want to see what we can do and be partners in combating this terrible issue. We all have the ability to help victims of human trafficking. We encourage you to learn more. The Department of Homeland Security has more information and resources at dhs.gov/blue campaign. Last slide, but 2 things on it. Contributing to the workforce. We're contributing. Our program continues to contribute. Through December, it was 4,735 jobs that have been approved from October through December. This agenda includes 517 job years. If everything is approved on this agenda, it will be 252 job years supported through the program just since October. And as I wrap up, I just wanted to let everybody know, particularly anybody who attends the meetings in Las Vegas, our main entrance here at the Washington Yard will be moving between now and our next board meeting. It will no longer be on Bonanza. It will be moving to Main, north of Bonanza, for our next board meeting. And just letting everyone know so that nobody gets confused. We're going to have some signage out there, but I want to give an early heads up. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I want to go back to the downtown access project slide. Do we have anyone here? I know my office has gotten an incredible amount of interest in this project. Do we have anyone here regarding that specific project?
Yes, Ryan Wheeler, our project manager, is here.
But he's with us though.
Oh, yes, I didn't know. You were asking for a member.
I was asking for a member of the public. Does any member of the public wish to ask any questions or have any input regarding that project? Good. Okay. Thank you. Any board members have any questions regarding the director's report?
I have one question.
Director Valentine.
Is that access point change permanent or just temporary due to construction?
It will be permanent. I don't know if you've noticed, we started putting some fencing in. We have a lot of different people that come in and access our facilities and use the gas pumps and have police services, and we're working to make sure that the public is kept safe from some of the other movements that occur on site.
Thank you.
Any other board members have any questions? Okay, then I'm going to take items separately from the consent agenda. We'll start with item number 5, approval of the minutes, which I think have to be approved separately. So do I have a motion to approve item number 5?
Governor, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. And what other item did we take separately?
Item 7.
7.
Number 7. Director Kell, took separately.
So it's in relation to item 7, but it's just in relation to a policy in general. So item 7, speaking to a third-party testing agency for roughly $18 million, and third-party testing just comes out and does testing to monitor the contractor that's performing. During my briefing, I'm in construction also, so just commercial construction, not roadway. And I was asking, hey, I understand this is an $18 million contract, but is the contractor at all responsible, like if there's failed inspections or anything like that? Because in my field, we're responsible if there's a failed inspection that has to do with lack of our work. Like if we call for an inspection that's failed or whatever it might be. So on this $18 million, it averages out to roughly $215 an hour for an inspector. So I don't know what the state's policy or NDOT's policy is for holding the contractor responsible for failed inspections, because this contract itself, $18 million, is just, it's a budget. So like you can go well over that or well beneath it based off of how the contractor performs, but there's nothing holding the contractor. My understanding is there's nothing holding the contractor responsible for his failure to do his portion of the work adequately.
Thank you, Member Powell. I'm going to have Darren Tedford, our Assistant Director of Project Delivery, answer your question.
Thank you, Director and Governor and Member Calb, for the question. As we discussed briefly, our specifications do require the contractor to monitor his process and prepare the materials, whatever it might be, for testing, for acceptance testing. This contract and to augment NDOT to do the acceptance testing is for $18 million. And yes, the contractor is required to prepare his materials. The direct consequence is not financial, but the delay to his project, to his schedule, there are liquidated damages for the contractor not completing the work on time. And that would be the consequence for him not having his materials prepared and for requiring multiple retests. I'm happy to provide more information and more detail in the future.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, those retests are paid by NDOT.
That's correct.
So it sounds, you're the first person to ask this question. I think we'll take the opportunity to see, what sort of testing failure we have.
Yeah, to see if it's even an issue or not. Okay.
I don't know that we'll be able to have that information immediately, but in the next several months, we'll work on collecting what our failure rate is, so we have an understanding of how big the problem is and if we need to change our policy.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, and I appreciate the question. So do I understand that in the private sector, the contractor has to pick up the cost of this, but in the public sector,
so it's in the private sector, it's negotiated like through our contracts and stuff. So I would say on my end, we probably end up paying for failed inspections half to 3/4 of the time, but not all the time. Because there's times when you'll call for an inspection, hoping that you're ready, that your rebar or whatever is installed, and your sub doesn't make it, and you fail that inspection. The third-party agency charges you for that time. And in this instance, they'd be charging the state for that. I don't know. I'm speaking from my experience.
So we'll take a look and see how often we have failed tests and how big the problem is, and get back to the board with that information and work on trying to find a solution moving forward.
That would be helpful. Okay. You bring us back the information as it relates to that one. Do we have a motion to approve item number 7, which was taken separately?
All motion to approve item number 7.
We have motion on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
Since I abstained on the award for this project, can I ask council if I also need to abstain on this contract to do the QC?
Dennis, did you hear that?
For the record, Dennis Gallagher, counsel. The decision to abstain rests with you, board member. If you believe you have a conflict or can't be impartial, you can abstain. Otherwise, your participation as a board member is encouraged.
And just for clarity, the agreement is with DCS,
Yep.
and it is to advance the project and ensure that it gets completed on
I
time.
don't believe I have a conflict, and I feel like I'm okay to vote, so I'm going to go ahead and vote. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Now we'll take the entire consent agenda, which is items number 5 through 10, with the exception of 5 and 7, which we took separately. So the motion to approve the consent agenda will be for items number 6, 8, 9, and 10. Do I have a motion for that one?
Governor, I'll make the motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve the remaining items, which are 6, 8, 9, and 10. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay.
Governor, the next item on your agenda is item 12, resolution of relinquishment of portions of East Lake Mead Boulevard in the city of North Las Vegas. This is relinquishment of the right-of-way from Ndot to the city of North Las Vegas. It's roughly 2 miles of East Lake Mead from Yale to Pecos.
Okay, remember this one. This is the North Las Vegas item that we had. Do we have any questions on this item, number 12? Do we have a motion on item number 12?
I move to approve.
We have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 13.
Governor Nick Johnson, our Chief of Right-of-Way Management, will be providing a report on an update on the Nevada Sustainable Transportation Funding Study and Advisory Working Group. Nick?
Good morning, Governor, board members. We're bringing the presentation up here, but while we're doing so, it'll be a brief overview and update on the, as Director Swallow mentioned, the Sustainable Transportation funding study that's underway and the advisory working group that's conducting it. So just to get started in these first few slides, kind of show or demonstrate the transportation funding challenge or need, if you will. What you see up here is a bunch of data and statistics. One, most importantly, down at the bottom in the middle, the vehicle miles traveled. Over the past 10 years, VMT has tripled here in Nevada, making it more challenging just to, a greater demand on our roadways to try to keep up with. And then coupling that with increased construction costs, making it harder and harder to not only deliver the new infrastructure, but also maintain our current infrastructure. And as many of you are aware, our primary source of revenue is through state and federal fuel taxes. And this graph here kind of shows in red, the rate of the fuel taxes going into the highway fund compared to what I just described in the blue line, the vehicle miles traveled on the state. And as you can see, the VMT is growing very quickly and even outpacing the amount of revenue coming in for infrastructure improvements. And as we have newer vehicles on our roadways with, higher miles per gallon ratings, hybrids, as well as electric vehicles, the amount of fuel tax being paid per mile driven is drastically decreasing. So here, if you look back to 2010, approximately 1.27 cents of fuel tax was paid per mile driven. And then if you fast forward to 2020, we're looking at about 1.03 cents of fuel tax being paid per mile driven. Sorry, got stuck here. All right, apologize there. But so those first few slides were kind of establishing that need and that challenge, and our legislators recognize that. In 2019, through SRC3, they directed the Committee on Energy to start investigating this funding challenge, as well as looking at electric vehicles. And as a result, this past legislative session, Assembly Bill 413 was passed, which directed NDOT to convene a larger working group to study this thoroughly with the goal of finding a sustainable source to meet our needs in the future. Also, as part of AB 413, it outlines some requirements of the type of membership that created the makeup of this advisory working group. And so as you can see up here, these bullet points on the screen, these were summarize some of the requirements of the type of members that we would have in this group. And it's a very diverse group that represents both public and private sectors, environmental, energy, business and industry across the state, minority groups, and really anyone with a really vested interest in Nevada's transportation infrastructure. And this advisory working group has a lot of work to do in a year's time frame for this type of study. And so what you see up here is the work plan of the advisory working group. Immediately convening the legislative session, the department worked with the advisory working group members to organize and start the meetings. And each of these meetings have a very specific objective, a goal of the group, so that they can continue to work through and thoroughly study the funding mechanisms and potential options so that we can provide a recommendation back to the legislature later this year. Now, one of the key components when looking at different options and possibilities for revenue mechanisms are what are the goals or the inspired outcomes that revenue option should have. And so what you see up here is some of the guiding revenue principles that the advisory working group created, so that every option that they analyze, they can look back at these and measure whether it meets the goals of what they're trying to accomplish. Now, I'm not going to read all of these in great details, but to summarize these, some key, components, on the financial side of it, ensuring that it's sustainable to meet the needs in the future, and that it's sufficient, that it provides enough to meet those needs. Equity, both on the user and social side, environmental, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and then of course, the flexibility, transparency, so that this funding source can be applied across all projects and programs and all modes of transportation. Now, what you see here is a comprehensive list of options, possibilities that came from our team, as well as the advisory working group. Now, these are all options or things that have been discussed at the moment. Our team has gone through and looked at these and analyzed them and performed calculations on how they may potentially perform here in Nevada. And our next step, which will be presenting this information to the advisory working group tomorrow, is for that group to go through this, analyze this, but more importantly, take each of these and evaluate them back to those guiding principles that I just showed on the last slide, to see what makes the most sense and what is the best fit for our state. Now, moving forward here over the next 6 to 8 months, the group will be, like as mentioned, analyzing these alternatives with the goal of paring these down to a handful, coming up with that recommendation, and then making that final report and getting it back to the legislatures later this year. Governor, board members, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Do we have any questions for Mr. Johnson from the board members? Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Moving on, that's an information item. Moving on to item number 14, information request to rename the Nevada Department of Transportation headquarters building.
So Governor, as you and the members of the board are aware, we have received many requests to consider renaming the headquarters building after a former team member and director, Director Dole. At the last meeting, I mentioned that NRS does not provide for this, but there was some question, and so we asked our AG's office to look at it. They provided a report. It is in the agenda, but to summarize, NRS does not provide for this board or for you in person, Governor, to name the building. If you have any specific questions regarding that, Lori Story, our Senior Deputy Attorney General, is available to answer questions.
Okay, Sullivan O'Neill, are you up there?
Yes, Governor, he's here still. He's coming back up to the podium.
I know that you contacted me and other board members as well as it relates to this issue, but what I've been told by our staff and legal counsel that this needs legislative approval. Are you aware of that?
No, I wasn't, because I know we have several buildings. I mean, the Laxalt building, the Bryan building, buildings down in Vegas. So if I understand correctly, what legal is saying, that it takes a BDR in short.
Yeah, could I get legal to weigh in here? Christine, you want to help me out?
Lori?
Yes. Hi. For the record, Lori Story, Senior Deputy Attorney General. I was asked to do some research as to the status of Nevada law, and there are several statutes that do authorize naming public facilities for persons, but the statutes limit that to a person recommended by the Veterans Service Commission, and that person who is recommended has to have been a member of the armed services and has to have been killed in action. And additionally, the facility that is to be named after the individual needs to have been opened, purchased, or constructed after July 1st of 2015. Otherwise, there are some statutes that provide for the director of the Parks Division to name park facilities, and for the director of the Health and Human Services to name facilities that they own or operate. There's a general statutory prohibition against naming any public building again after a member of a currently serving governing board member. But there's no statutory authority that would allow the Transportation Board to name the administration building after a former director.
Governor, if I may.
Please.
So if I understand, there's nothing prohibiting naming of a building. There are certain statutes that say if the person's, I'll use the term war veteran, who died in line of duty, can be named after. But otherwise, there's no NRS that says a building cannot be named after a deceased individual at the request of, in this case, the board or a governor's executive order.
There is no statute that directly prohibits that. However, the process of statutory interpretation would say that given the specific statute that addresses naming transportation facilities in Chapter 407, that's 407-119, where it provides for the procedure I outlined. And furthermore, it doesn't even allow for the naming of public buildings, but more transportation facilities in those circumstances. If the legislature had intended for the board or the director to name transportation facilities, they would have included that, transportation, they would have included that in the statute.
I guess I come from a different world that says anything that says that there's no law saying I can't do it, so I must be able to do it.
Well,
I think there's a discussion here, Counselor, about whether or not it's permissive or it's prohibited, I think is what the Assemblyman is saying. That, you know, he's saying it's not prohibited, so that makes it allowable. Is that what I'm gathering? That was the...
Thank you, Governor. Yes. Or I can just cut to the quick, and I can promise you with re-election that there will be a BDR for that and some other actions here for naming of areas. But I do think it is allowable since it is not disallowed by NRS.
well, my report was that there's no direct authority permitting it.
So, Governor, I look to you or even the board members, how they feel about moving forward with a executive order doing this.
Well, I'd have to talk to my legal counsel. I don't know if I've got, Kevin, are you on the phone?
You should be in the room, Governor. Are we posted to discuss this or just
Yeah.
to receive a report?
Information.
It's an information item.
But no action?
No action. Kevin, are you in the room?
Yes, I am, Governor. For the
Okay.
record, Kevin Benson, I am General Counsel to the Governor, and I have also looked into this issue, and I agree with Ms. Story's conclusion that the statutes as they are currently enacted provide a very specific mechanism for naming public buildings, and it also requires that the people that they are named after meet very specific qualifications and be recommended by the Veteran Services Commission. The clear implication from that is that no other way of naming buildings is permitted by law. There would not be such a strict statutory process if it were presumed that you could do it through some other process. It would make no sense. And so I also looked into the legislative history behind that change, and there was a lot of concerns expressed by the Parks Department in particular, that they had put a lot of money and time into branding certain state parks, and they were concerned that if the statute applied retroactively, that they would be required to rename parks that they've already sunk a lot of money into. And so it was very clear from that legislative history that the point was to make it prospective only and only apply to essentially new facilities that were acquired or built, so forth, after 2015.
Okay, Assemblyman, I think then what we're going to have to do is get a bill draft, to clarify this. If I've got two lawyers telling me it's recommended we don't go that direction, you can get a bill draft. I think that's probably the best way to go.
I can promise you, Governor, pending re-election, I should say too, there will be such a bill draft submitted.
I have no doubt, knowing you, that you're going to come forward and follow through on your commitment. That's great. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any board member questions as it relates to this item? We do not have an executive session, correct? So we'll move on to item number 16, which is the second time set aside for public comment. This is the second time set aside for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item, please step forward, identify yourself for the record, and comments be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody in Las Vegas for public comment? Do we have anybody in Carson City for public comment?
None here, Governor.
Oh, none here. I thought he said I am here. Yeah, okay. Okay, do we have any board member comments? No. Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.